Good evening and welcome to the 2015 Foster Financial Town Meeting. Please join me in saluting the flag of our fine country. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, quorum for this meeting is 15. I believe we've made it. Just a gut check. Can everybody hear me all right? We're good? Okay. I'd like to call on Jane Christopher, Town Clerk, for the reading of the warrant.
Greetings. By the Town Clerk of the Town of Foster, Rhode Island, to the Town Sergeant of the Town of Foster, or any of the constables of the town. Pursuant to Chapter 3 of Title 45, you are hereby required to post at least 7 days before the 5th day of May, AD 2015, written notification in 3 or more public places in the Town of Foster, Rhode Island, notifying and warning the electors of the Town of Foster qualified to vote upon any proposition to impose a tax for the expenditure of money, to assemble a town meeting in the Captain Isaac Payne School Auditorium in the Town of Foster on the 5th day of May 2015 at 7 o'clock in the p.m. for the purpose of ordering a tax to be levied and assessed on the rateable property of the town and the inhabitants thereof for the payment of the town debts and interest, for the payment of the town's proportion of the state tax, for the support and maintenance of the poor, for the building, repairing, and amending of highways, for the building, repairing, and amending of bridges, for the improvement in any manner deemed fit of any property belonging to the town, for all necessary charges and expenses whatsoever arising within the town, whether incidental or not to the above, and for the support of the town's share of the Foster Gloucester Regional School District, for authorizing expenditures of the Capital Reserve Fund, for anticipation notes and bonds, and for any or all other purposes authorized by law, and to transact such other business as may legally come before the meeting. Given under my hand this 27th day of April 18, 2015 at the Town of Foster, Rhode Island.
Okay, before we start, just a couple of words of appreciation on your behalf to some of the folks that have to do with making this meeting actually happen. I'd like to thank all of the board and committee members who wrestled through the budget process to present to the town council. The town council themselves, the department heads of various municipal departments, as well as the staff in the town hall all put a lot of work into this. I'd also like to thank the Payne School staff for preparing the room tonight and helping us make this work. And I'd especially like to thank the Board of Canvassers, and I'm afraid some of them are out in the hallway. I think I said this last year when I started this job a few years back. I didn't know how much effort the Board of Canvassers puts into not only this meeting but general elections, so they deserve your thanks as well. Okay, I'm going to go through the conduct of the meeting, and I'll have a few comments later. We'll also have brief presentations from a member of the school committee and from the town council about their respective budgets. But here's how we run the meeting. To vote, you've got to be wearing a wristband on your right arm, as issued by the Board of Canvassers. You've got to be seated in one of these two sections. If you're seated someplace else, the Board of Canvassers isn't going to look at you. If you leave the room during the meeting, you have to surrender your voter affirmation slip, which is the yellow slip that the canvassers gave you when you signed in. When you return to the room, you can retrieve it from the Board of Canvassers. Non-voting members of the audience, those without a wristband, those who are not registered voters, should be seated in the section to my left. And I would remind all of you that you are not to speak when I call for a voice vote. Thank you. The budget will be considered department by department. Motions to adopt the department budget will be in order. And except for those filed with the town clerk 7 days before this meeting. Motions to add a line to a budget are not in order, and there were no such motions filed with the town clerk. So we'll be adding no lines to the budget this evening. Motions to amend the department budget by a specific amount, either more or less, are in order. Amendments to a motion, if any, must be decided before a vote on the main motion may take place. Voters may address questions to the moderator using the microphone in the front of the room. No voter may speak a second time until all those wishing to speak have done so. Motions to move a question are in order only if the moderator determines that there's been sufficient amount of time or sufficient discussion on the motion. Voting will be by voice vote, standing vote, or machine ballot at the moderator's discretion. For a motion to prevail, the majority, more than half of those present, must cast their vote in the affirmative. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. There are two exceptions to that. Motions to move a question require an affirmative vote by 2/3 of you. A machine ballot may be compelled by an affirmative vote of 1/5 or more of the people in the room. Such a motion is in order when the period for discussion of a motion or an amendment is closed by the moderator. In all cases, failure to vote is the same as a no vote. Political rhetoric, innuendo, personal attacks are not allowed, and I will stop you if you go there. Any questions? Any at all? Okay. One of my goals is that everybody who's here, and I know there are people that have not been to a financial town meeting before, I want you all to know what you're voting on. If you don't worry about coming to the microphone, raise your hand, say, Mr. Moderator, I have a question or a point of order, and I will entertain that, because I want you to know what you're doing when you vote. Okay. I'd like to recognize Kathleen Swanson from the school committee for brief comments on the Payne School budget.
First up, wow.
Power the council's microphone.
Hello, everyone. Greetings. The Foster School Department is asking for the same amount that we asked at last year's financial town meeting. The main factor in our ability to level fund the budget is that we have declining enrollment, a smaller incoming kindergarten class, and a larger outgoing 5th grade class. So as a result of next year's budget, we plan for one less classroom teacher, and due to a slight decline in our self-contained special ed classroom, we're also going to have one less teacher's assistant. So in addition to maintaining the existing programs and continue to move the district forward, we have several initiatives that we're working on and directing the money toward. One is providing resources and professional development so that our teachers are current and knowledgeable on best practices in literacy, mathematics, and science. We have many new teachers and have budgeted for an induction coach to work with our first and second year teachers, and we're also budgeting for a technology coach to support teachers in using new technology in the classroom. Science was another area we identified as needing more support, so we purchased a new science curriculum aligned to new science standards, and we'll be providing good professional development to support our teachers in this transition. We're trying to use every dollar we have as wisely as possible. The school department is asking the taxpayers to support a town appropriation for the Captain Isaac Payne School in the amount of $3,244,262 for the fiscal year 2015-16, the same as we requested in the 14-15 year. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. I now recognize Town Council President John Lewis for comments on the operating budget of the town.
Good evening, everyone. So you should have two documents that were handed out at the door that deal with the town. What I'm going to discuss now is the overall budget. It's got a picture with some milkweed flowers on the front. The second one is a document with relation to the Providence Water Supply Board, which we'll be dealing with near the end of the meeting. So don't go home early because this is important. It doesn't impact directly on this budget, but it is important. So I'm not going to discuss everything that's in this packet, but I do want to highlight a few things. If you could take a look at page 2, there's a pie chart. And on that pie chart, it indicates the percentage of the budgetary increase that is allocated to each area. Overall, the budget for the town, and that includes the local town services, the Payne School, and the region, the overall budget increase is at 4%. And that 4% is allocated across these departments. 27% of that increase is due to increases in education. And as you heard with Kathleen Swanson's presentation, it's not due to Payne School, it's at the region due to a population shift change and increases in cost. That's not on the table this evening. It's already been accepted at the Regional Financial Town Meeting. 27% of the increase is due to education. 37% of the increase is due to capital expenses. We have a fairly aggressive capital program this evening to present to you. I'll go through that. But we are also putting some additional money into capital, more than the required 2% in order to try to sustain the long-term viability of that fund. And then you can see the rest. Public safety, 16%. That includes police, the 3 fire companies, and the ambulance corps. 13% legislative legal. That's mostly the stuff at the town hall. Public works is 5%, and then the other areas are fairly inconsequential. On page 5, we do talk about the regional budget, and there is one thing that's important for this evening, one thing that we will be voting on, and that's the student population shift. At a previous financial town meeting, this meeting set aside some money to be used in the future only if there were a student population shift at the region. And there was a student population shift this year. So to mitigate some of the cost of the regional increase, this council is presenting to you a proposal to fund $72,337, which is attributed to the student population shift from the student population shift fund. That actually does not affect the tax levy or your taxes. It just comes from a specific fund and is applied to lower the amount that we have to levy this evening. On page 4, there is a pie chart with the total expenditures of the town. The first pie chart was divided based upon the increase. The second pie chart is based upon the amount we spend for each department. So
Speak up, John. A little louder, please.
Sure, absolutely. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. So 61%, as shown on this pie chart, is for education. That's both for Payne School in the region. You can see all of the others laid out: 13% public safety, 9% public works, etc. That lays out where all of the monies are being spent by department. So I'd like to just talk about some of the changes that are included in this budget here. On the top of page 5, we indicate in the first bullet that we have proposed a 2 to 3% salary increase for the town hall employees. A number of the salary increases are contractually driven, but this 2 to 3% is for the non-union folks. Is this fading in and out? Holding it too far away? Okay, I'll hold it closer. Some of the raises, as you look, may be a bit higher than that, a bit higher than the 2 to 3%, due to a salary equity study that we did. And some of them, notably the planner and the police chief, are actually at 0%. They're not taking a raise at all this year. On page 6, some notable expenditures. We are proposing in this budget an increase in the solicitor stipend due to a recent surge in legal concerns. You may have heard about the pension issues with the state of Rhode Island. You may have heard about the Providence Water Supply Board issues, arbitration, and various things that are going on in the town. So there's increased work. We're proposing an increased stipend. The next two bullets, the planning department and the zoning department, we are proposing an additional 4 hours of work time for those two department heads.
increasing them both from 20 hours a week to 24 hours a week. So the planner is increasing hours but does not have an increase in her hourly pay. The justification for that was that in the past, full-time planners or planners who work greater than 20 hours a week have been able to obtain grants for the town. With a part-time planner for the past 3 years, we haven't been successful in obtaining any grants from the town at all. The building and zoning inspector also, we're proposing go from 20 to 24 hours a week, and that's based upon a recommendation of our previous building inspector who has just recently moved on to a full-time job in Cumberland. And his assessment that the work required for the town of Foster couldn't be done in a 20-hour week. On page 7, just 2 things I'd like to point out. One, we are maintaining $4,350, the same as last year, in the cemetery fund, so that the town can continue to mow the perpetual care graves that we've committed to. And we have added a new line item that you may notice called LESO equipment. There are pictures of 2 pieces of equipment there that the town has acquired this year. LESO stands for Law Enforcement Support Office. It's an office of the federal government. And they give grants of equipment to towns to assist in law enforcement functions. Chief Zito and his department have been instrumental in getting that equipment for the town. And obviously, the police benefit. We don't have to fund the equipment. Ultimately, the equipment will become property of the town and will all benefit. So you see here pictures of a bulldozer and a large dump truck. Over the past 18 months or so, through this LESO program, we have obtained almost $700,000 worth of equipment. And our only cost is to transport it here. So that $10,000 would be to transport a bulldozer or a truck from wherever it's located on the Army base in the U.S. We received something from Maine, something from New Jersey. Whatever the transportation cost to bring it here is what that LESO line item will fund. Police department increases reflects contractual increases. Fire departments and ambulance requests have been funded to the level that they requested. On page 8, just a quick discussion of the capital program. It's a fairly aggressive program. The capital program does not affect the tax levy. It comes out of the capital fund. So these expenses, whether they're added or subtracted from the capital fund, do not affect the tax rate. I don't know that I need to go through every single one. They're listed there for you. But some copy machines for the treasurer's office, police department, lease on police vehicles, $97,000 for paving of town roads, $50,000 to repair the bridge on Johnson Road, just south of the golf course. $99,700 for building and grounds, and that includes a new roof on the DPW garage and partial a wash bay and police impound lot behind the DPW garage. The last paragraph discusses the Windsor Road Bridge, which we presented to you last year, where we had borrowed money from the Foster Reserve Fund, the amount of $267,000 to do the Windsor Road Bridge. Well, as you're all aware, that was completed, and without having to ask for any money from the council, from the taxpayers, the council was able to pay that debt off and pay back the rainy day fund this year, between savings in our expenditures and between monies that we received from the FEMA due to some storms that took out some of our bridges. So there's no request to repay that bridge because it's already done. On page 9, there's a bar chart. It shows our capital reserve fund activity. So the capital reserve fund is the fund that we use to pay for fire trucks and dump trucks and snow plows and all those big expenses that I just laid out for you. And you can see the 8-year trend of the amount that has been in that fund. It started out with $1.2 million back in 2008, and due to some of those large expenditures, it's down to about $250,000. That's what's left. It's not really in a healthy state at this point. And the reason for that trend is in that time, we have purchased 2 fire trucks, a third one on the way this year. We purchased a rescue, we purchased a dump truck. Each of those expenditures is $200,000 or more, and that diminishes the fund. So the council is proposing that in addition to the 2% contribution to the capital fund, that we put an additional $173,560 towards this fund. So we're putting in 2% of our budget and then an additional $173,000. And those two things together will make the fund healthier on a long-term basis. Okay, page 10 and 11, just how does this affect you? One of the things that the council did to more equitably distribute the tax levy is we adopted a decrease in the motor vehicle exemption. So the motor vehicle exemption is mandated at $500 per vehicle by the state of Rhode Island. Towns may choose to give a larger exemption, and the town of Foster has been doing that for 8, 9, or 10 years. A few years ago, we lowered it down from $3,000 to $3,000. Last year, we lowered it down to $3,100, then to $2,000. This year, we're lowering it down to the minimum state required, $500. And we've done that because we feel the need to more equitably distribute the tax burden. When I discuss the Providence Water Board issues, it'll become apparent that it's very difficult to maintain all the subsidies that we have in town, including an additional tax exemption on motor vehicles, and meet all of the needs of the town. So right at the bottom of this page 10, it indicates what the effect would be of our budget. The real estate tax would go up 14 cents per thousand. The tangible tax would go up 19 cents per thousand. And the automobile tax, the rate doesn't change, but because the exemption went down, each person would pay an additional $55 on your vehicle. So that's the effect of the town budget. Page 11 shows the actual effect due to what's been going on with the Providence Water Board. So just briefly, I will explain in more detail later, but just briefly, Providence Water Board went to court with Situate a few years back, and they received a judgment in their favor, in favor of the Providence Water Supply Board, to decrease the assessment of all of their acreage from wherever it was down to $8,400 per acre. So in our town, I believe it was assessed at around $10,000 per acre, and it was dropped. It is now dropped to $8,400. So what does that mean? If they're paying less, it means we have to make up that amount of money throughout every other taxpayer in town. So the actual effect due to the town budget is 14 cents per thousand. But the additional effect due to this revaluation of Providence Water Supply Board property is an additional 17 cents per thousand. So that's one of the largest issues this evening, is trying to get in line with what the court has said with regard to Situate, put us in line with that so we don't end up in court as well. Well, I think that hits all of the highlights. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have as we go through each department's budget. So I'll return it back to the moderator.
Thank you, John. Okay, before we get down to the meat and potatoes, just a couple of comments from me. Again, I'm concerned that you know how the meeting works and that you know what you're voting on. So I want to talk just a minute about how we're going to vote. A lot of the questions tonight, I'm just going to ask those in favor say aye. And if I'm not comfortable, and I heard a majority of people say aye, then I'll probably call for a standing vote. At that time or any time, if you're uncomfortable with a standing vote, you may raise your voice, raise your hand, and say, I move for a machine ballot. Now, why would you do that? Again, the votes here tonight are decided by the majority of those present. And before we take a standing or machine vote, I will be asking the canvassers how many people that are voters are in the room. So to pass a motion on a standing vote, the only thing I'll ask for is those in favor of the motion will stand up. If more than half of you stand up according to the canvassers count, then the motion will pass. If we go to a machine ballot, there's a couple of choices. The machine ballot has two things on it, yes and no. I'll repeat, it has yes and no. So if we go to a machine ballot and you want to vote against the motion, you can go to the machine and do so. You can also go to the machine and vote for the motion. If you stay in your seat, it is exactly the same thing as going to the machine and voting no, because the only thing we're going to count from the machine are the votes that say yes. Any questions on that? Yes?
Is there any way to abstain from voting?
No. The only way you can abstain from a vote is to leave the room. Okay. It's a good question. Okay.
Mr. Moderator,
Yes.
may I ask Mr. Lewis a question on the budget in general? Before we get to specific items?
I'll recognize you before I start the budget process, Mr.
Thank you.
Suarez. Mr. Lewis alluded to a minute ago, there were several things, don't go home early. That's especially important this evening. Every meeting that I've run, I've asked people, we're going to have a recess after we finish considering the department budgets. After that recess, there are 7 resolutions that you're going to be asked to vote on, and they are all very important. It's when you give the town council and the tax collector the authority to take your money and how much they can take. It authorizes them to borrow money, to move some funds and do some other things. And this evening, especially important, is the resolution on a proposed agreement with the Providence Water Supply Board. So I strongly encourage all of you to stick it out. We hope it doesn't get too late, and stay till the end. Okay. A general question on the budget is in order, Mr. Savazi.
Mr. Lewis, since the region,
Probably just going to be closer to it. There's no switch on that.
hello? Got a switch. I don't know. Out?
That's better.
Mr. Lewis, since the Payne School is at 0 and the region is at 3.1%, this is a philosophical question. If both schools were using their 4%, how can we run the town? Because the total budget is 4% with 0 from the Payne School and 3.17 something from the region. In the last 7 years, the region has had 5 0 budgets, the Payne School has had 4, and the town continues to spend more in operating and capital than it really has allotted if the schools go to their full allotment of 4%. So could you address that, yes or no?
I don't know if that's a yes or no question. And it certainly seems speculative. How could the town run? I'm not sure. I'd have to see specifically what the finances would be on any particular year. I don't know for a fact that the region has come forward with 5 years of 0 budget. I don't know that those things are
And
actually.
2 years of money back to the student population.
Mr. Lewis has the floor.
Yeah, sorry.
So I don't know if those are factual statements, but I also know that I can't actually answer the question without being faced with a specific financial scenario. So could we run the town if Payne School goes up 4% and the region goes up 4%? I guess the answer is yes, we would have to. But specifics, I'd have to deal with when I was faced with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Okay. In your handout, you'll find section 2, I believe it's labeled, which is the actual department budgets that we're going to be considering. The third column from the right says admin proposed FY 2016. At the bottom of each department, that's the number we'll be voting on. So the first department under consideration is legislative, legal, and general in the amount of $341,740. A motion in that amount would be appropriate. Is there a second? A second has been had. Is there discussion on the motion? There being no discussion, those in favor of $341,740 indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. No. The ayes have it. Motion carries. The next department is planning. The amount of $74,882. A motion for that amount, please. A second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the planning budget? There being none, those in favor of $74,882 indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. Ayes have it. Motion carries. Building and zoning, the amount of $54,663. A motion for that amount, please.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the building and zoning budget? Yes. By the way, if you're thinking of speaking on a particular department, feel free to queue up in the middle of the room, that's fine.
Eric Bergstrom, Tuckahoe Road, Tuckahoe Buildings. This whole thing is really good, but nothing negative about the budget. But just work on getting a full-time building inspector. We're all wrestling with our jobs in town. We all want to do the right thing. It's very tough for Spokio to be in Cumberland full-time and handling our stuff. I'm out doing like the Darcy burnout job, and I'm having a hard time getting answers. Not to blame him, but just work on it. Try to get something going. Okay. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the building and zoning budget? Okay, those in favor of the motion for $54,663 indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Finance Department, the amount of $203,025. A motion for that would be in order.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the finance budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Assessor's budget, the amount of $75,175. Is there a motion for that amount?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the assessor's budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. General Administration, the amount of $274,500. A motion for that amount, please. So moved. Is there a second? Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the General Administration budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Human Services, the amount of $23,900. Motion would be in order. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the Human Services budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Only 20 minutes a day, I'm getting scared. Community funding, in the amount of $18,083. A motion, please.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
The discussion on the community funding budget. There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Refuse removal, in the amount of $289,686. A motion, please.
So moved.
A second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there discussion on the refuse removal budget? being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Police Department budget, the amount of $1,318,194. A motion for that amount, please.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the Police Department budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Animal control at the amount of $37,669. A motion for that amount to be in order.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a second? Is there discussion on the animal control budget? Sir?
Yeah, David Hughes, North Road. Is this a part-time or full-time position?
Didn't hear you.
Part-time or full-time position?
Speak up loud, the microphone is not working. Question is it a full-time or part-time position? I assume you're referring to the animal control officer. Mr. Lewis?
It is a part-time position.
Then why have we paid medical coverage since 1981?
Because part-time, excuse me, because people who are part-time at the town of Foster, once they achieve a certain number of hours, do receive medical
And
benefits
that number of hours is what?
in excess of 21 hours.
21 hours?
That's correct.
There's an ordinance that covers that position. It states, shall report to be present for duty no more than 20 hours a week. And an ordinance is like a law, am I correct?
It is a local law, I
Cannot be
agree.
changed without a public hearing, am I correct?
It is a local law, I agree with you, yes.
Does that read 20 hours a week?
I can't see it, sir.
But you know it anyway, don't you?
Let me
I
see what
told
you're
you
looking
about
at.
this.
That's what it says, sir, I agree with you.
Why is he treated like a full-time employee?
Mr. Cavachel, who you're referring to, has been a long-term employee of the town. He has been receiving medical benefits.
Mr. Lewis, the questions are about the position, not the individual.
Well, I'll try not to mention the name. The individual who is in that position has been a long-time employee of the town. That individual has received benefits for as long as I've been involved in the town, and that's 20 years. And the council is essentially considering him grandfathered, and we're not pulling the benefits away from him at this point. That's not the council's intention.
It sounds illegal.
I've stated the council's position. If there's anyone on the council that wishes to address this, it could easily be put on a council agenda. I haven't been asked to put it on
It
the
can't
agenda.
easily be put on the agenda. That's right.
Okay, questions here are about the budget,
All right.
not about the council meetings, they're about the town budget.
Well, let me state then, I've got a pay slip here that puts him in $25. Signed by the police chief.
I would defer to the police chief in determining the needs of his department. If the police chief tells me he needs 25 hours a week, or 23, or
Can't work
27,
more than 20.
or 4, then I would defer to his judgment.
So it's okay.
Mr. Boyd, we can't hear you.
No, the questions have been asked and answered. I'm not interested in opinion now. I'm not interested in departmental policy. I'm interested in the budget. Do you have any further questions about the budget?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there any additional discussion about the animal control budget? Motion is on the floor for $37,669. Is there any further discussion? Those in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. Next department is other public safety in the amount of $302,034. Is there a motion for that amount? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the other public safety budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate so by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Public Works Department in the amount of $878,416. A motion for that amount would be in order.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
The motion and a second. Is there discussion on the Public Works Department budget?
Yes, please.
Mr. Hassel.
Michael Hassel, Gene Allen Road. I would ask that we increase the paving from 97 for another 60,000 to repave Gene Allen Road, which is an unsafe road, traveled by school buses.
Okay, understand that you need to make a motion, so I'd like to make a motion to do X, would be in order. And I believe what you're asking is to increase the DPW budget by 60,000.
If I could, point of order.
Point of order.
The paving budget is in the capital budget, it's not in the DPW department. So it would be more appropriate to make that motion under the capital budget.
All right? Okay. So no motion. The question on the floor is the original amount of $878,416. Is there further discussion on the Public Works Department budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Motion carries. Conservation Commission budget, the amount of $1,425. A motion for that amount, please.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Is there discussion on the Conservation Commission budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Land Trust, in the amount of $2,630. Motion for that amount, please. A second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the Land Trust budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Libraries, in the amount of $150,842. A motion for that amount would be in order.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Okay. The discussion on the library budget. There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Recreation Department, in the amount of $25,300. Motion for that amount would be in order.
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the Recreation Department budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Capital budget, in the amount of $566,200. A motion for that amount would be in order.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the capital budget? I'm sorry I didn't think of that the first time. I should have known that this was the proper department. So I'll recognize Mr. Hassel.
I would like to ask that you increase the amount for paving by 60,000 in order to pave Gene Allen Road.
I will entertain that as a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. This will be an amendment to the motion that is on the floor. So we're going to vote in a moment on the amendment to increase the capital budget by $60,000. Just so that everybody is clear, we are not voting to pave a particular road. We will be voting to add money to the capital budget with a request or a suggestion that it be used for that purpose. Are we all clear on that? Okay. Is there discussion on the amendment to the capital budget? Mr. Ryder, you had your hand up first.
I'm just wondering if we were already at the 4%, what happens now?
It's capital. Doesn't matter.
Should be on.
The capital budget is funded from the capital project fund, so it's not an actual increase in your levy. The problem with that is your capital project fund only has a balance of about $240,000 or $50,000 if we fund it as it's stated here. So that would actually deplete that fund even further.
Is there further discussion on the amendment? Mr. May.
Paving of roads is selected by the DPW director, and that's usually dictated by the 5-year road plan. Speak up. The 5-year road plan should dictate when and the wherewithal to pave Gene Allen Road. Having said that, Gene Allen Road was on the 5-year plan several years ago to pave. I would suggest that we review the 5-year plan and get Gene Allen back on the 5-year plan.
Thank you, Mr. May.
We couldn't hear a word you said.
Yeah, we can't hear anything. Turn that up.
All you have to do is lift the mic up.
Turn that up.
No, you just have to raise the mic higher. John, you just have to raise the stand.
Hello?
You just have to raise the stand up. There you go.
Hello?
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you. Okay, is there further discussion on the amendment to the capital budget?
Can someone summarize what the gentleman just said?
Sure, I will try to. Mr. May made reference to the 5-year road plan, which is a living document that the town and the planning board maintains. That plan prioritizes individual roads for upgrades such as paving or other repairs. It is regularly reviewed, should be regularly reviewed by the planning board and the DPW. So his suggestion is that road fell off the plan, it should be reevaluated and reprioritized back on the plan. Any other questions? Did I do that properly? No? Okay, thank you. Any other questions, any other discussion?
Jack Ricci now. It's really close. Can you hear me?
Yes. Get right up to the microphone.
Since that road was removed from the plan, can anyone here shed some light on how these decisions are being made and maybe some examples of what roads are on the plan, or, you know, just to help us understand how the money's being spent?
Recognize anyone from the council that would like to address that?
I don't think the road specifically fell off the plan, but I think the emphasis of councils over the past few years has been to bring up to snuff the paved roads that we already have. So in the past 8 years or so, we've redone East Killenly Road, we've done Burgess Road, we've done sections of North Road, and sections of Johnson Road, Balcom Road. So the priority is to, what has been, to get all of the currently paved roads into shape before we start to add additional gravel roads to the inventory. So it's not that it's fallen off and has been ignored, it's just that with the limited resources that we have, keeping up with 52 miles of paved road essentially means with a 25-year lifespan that we have to pave 2 miles of road every year at a cost of about $100,000 a mile. So it becomes a resource game.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment? Okay, there being none, we'll prepare for a vote. Again, you're voting on an amendment which is to increase the capital budget by $60,000. Are there any questions on what you're voting on? Okay, Ms. Swanson.
Kathleen Swanson. I'm just wondering, you had mentioned that this would be depleting the account, so this motion isn't to add $60,000 in additionally? Could you just clarify that?
The council would have two decisions to make at that point. They could take the money from the capital fund, or they could decrease the amount, the extra amount that they're going to contribute to the capital fund for the $60,000, so that it would offset. There would be two options. If you look at Department 42, there's an additional contribution into the capital fund to increase the balance in that fund. If we don't do that, if we decrease that by $60,000, then it would all be funded. But either way, regardless of how you do it, whether you put the money in and take more money out, it will all have the same effect on the capital project fund. So right now, after this 2016 fiscal year end, there should be about between $240,000 and $260,000 in that fund. If you use an additional $60,000, it will fall slightly below the 200,000 range.
Okay. Discussion, I believe, is closed right now. We're ready for a vote on the motion. And again, this is the amendment to the main motion. Those in favor of increasing the capital budget by $60,000, please indicate so by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. Nays have it, the motion fails. Is there any additional discussion on the capital budget? Okay, there being none, those in favor of the original motion for $566,200 indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. The next section on your page 15 is the automatic calculation of the capital contribution. We do not vote on that. We now go to Department 50, the Payne School.
Now, Mr. Moderator, I think we have to vote on the additional cap transfer of $173,000.
No, this is where you would vote on. That capital resolution is the money from capital fund into general fund, not the other way around.
So you're saying vote on it?
You would count this, yes, you would.
My apologies. My apologies. It's been explained to me that we need to take a vote on the Department 42 capital 2%. And we are voting on the bottom line of that budget, which includes an additional established capital transfer of $173,560. So a motion for $412,937 is in order.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the capital transfer? And again, to clarify, and I apologize, Mr. Lewis explained this in his presentation, we're actually authorizing a transfer that is greater than the 2% that is mandated. Okay? Yes?
And Sharon Al Kennedy Road. Since the capital fund
You speak real close to the mic.
Since the capital fund seems to be pretty low, has there been any consideration about raising that minimum 2% every year to say 2.5% to try to get us back out of the hole?
The charter mandates 2%. The council has requested an additional amount this year. To change the 2% would require a charter change. And then I'll let Mr. Lewis address it as well if he wishes.
The council did convene a charter committee. They are in the process of meeting and looking for proposals to go forward to the voters at the next election. And we did ask that they look at this.
Thank you.
Is there any further discussion on the capital transfer amount? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. Motion carries. Payne School budget, in the amount of $3,244,260. A motion for that amount, please.
Motion.
A second.
Second.
Is there discussion on the Payne School budget? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Nay. The motion carries. Okay. So we've concluded the part where we vote on the operational budget. I'm going to declare a short recess. Or are you good? It includes what? Okay.
They can vote on $72,000.
They need to do that in the resolution?
One or the other will be fine.
Resolution's here.
Right, but if they vote for it, then we have to find somewhere else to have to.
So we're better off with the resolution for the amount. Okay. In order to make things work for the treasurer, let's, before we recess, do one more thing. Okay. All right. To make this work for the treasurer, calculating our final numbers, I'm going to read a resolution to you and ask for a motion on that resolution. Resolved, it is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and hereby is authorized and directed to utilize $72,337 for changes in appropriation of the Foster Gloucester Regional School as a direct result of changes in student population. Is there a motion to support that resolution? Is there a second? Is there discussion on the motion or the resolution? Yes, sir.
Is this a one-time thing, or is this the new normal because of the changing population?
This is because of the changing population and ratio between the two towns in the school district. Is it a one-time thing? We don't know, because we don't know how much a population would change in another year. Any further discussion? Okay. Those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay, short recess, and again, I strongly advise that you remain. I said it would be short. Please take your seats. Okay, we have 6 additional resolutions that I'm going to read for you. And then I'll entertain motions on each one as we go through them. The first motion is the Capital Project Fund Transfer Resolution. Resolved, and it is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and is hereby authorized and directed to transfer to the general fund $566,200 from the Capital Projects Fund for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2016 for the purchase and improvements set forth in the capital program. Is there a motion for this resolution? Is there a second? Is there discussion? There being none, those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Land Trust Transfer Resolution. Resolved, and it is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and hereby is authorized and directed to transfer to the general fund $2,630 from the Land Trust Fund for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2015 for the operating and administrative expenditures of the Foster Land Trust per the amendment to Article 10, Section 10.17 of the Foster Home Rule Charter. Is there a motion for this resolution? Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the resolution? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Property Valuations Reserve Resolution. Resolved, it is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and is hereby authorized and directed to reserve and commit unexpended funds appropriated for property valuations for the sole purpose of funding property valuations in future years. Is there a motion for the resolution?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there discussion on the resolution? There being none, those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay.
No.
Motion carries. Tax Anticipation Notes Resolution. Resolved, that it is hereby voted That the town treasurer of the town of Foster be and is hereby authorized and directed to borrow any necessary amounts of money from time to time during the current year for the proper and appropriate transaction of the town's business in anticipation of taxes to be assessed as of December 31, 2014, and any note or notes that may be issued under this authority shall be paid not later than 1 year from their date. Is there a motion to support this resolution? Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion? There being none, those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay. This is the long one. Tax resolution. Resolved, and it is hereby voted that the electors of the town of Foster qualified to vote on any proposition to impose a tax for the expenditure of money in a town meeting legally assembled on the 5th day of May 2015, hereby order the levy and collection of a tax on rateable property of said town of Foster in a sum of not less than $12,175, nor more than $12,188,892, said taxes for ordinary expenses and charges, and for the payment of interest and indebtedness in whole or in part of said town of Foster, and for other purposes authorized by law. The tax assessor shall apportion said levy on the assessed valuations on the inhabitants and rateable property of said town of Foster as of the 31st day of December 2014 at 12 o'clock midnight, said date being known as the date of assessment of town valuations. The tax assessor shall, on completion of said apportionment, date, certify, and sign the same and deliver to and deposit the same in the office of the town clerk. The town clerk, on receipt of same, shall forthwith make a copy of same and deliver it to the town treasurer, who shall issue and affix to said copy a warrant under her hand directed to the collector of taxes of said town of Foster, commanding her to proceed and collect said taxes of the persons and estates liable thereof. Said taxes assessed and apportioned on the 31st day of December 2014 shall be due and payable on the 15th day of July 2015. All taxes remaining unpaid on the first day of August 2015 shall carry into collected a penalty at the rate of 12% per year upon such unpaid taxes. Said taxes may be paid in 4 quarterly installments, the first installment being 25% on or before the 15th day of July 2015, and the remaining installments as follows: 25% on or before the 15th day of October 2015, 25% on or before the 15th day of January 2016, and the last 25% on or before the 15th day of April 2016. In the event that remaining tax or any subsequent installment is not paid when due, then the whole tax or any remaining unpaid balance shall become due and payable immediately, and shall bear interest at the rate of 12% per year. Interest will be charged on all late payments in their entirety and shall not be calculated on a limited per diem basis. All taxes not paid on or before the first day of January 2016 for the levy on assessed valuations as of the 31st day of December 2013 shall be collected by said tax collector according to law. In the event that payment is made by check and the check is for any reason dishonored or refused payment by the bank on which it is drawn, then the collector shall add a bad check charge in the amount of $30 to the taxpayer's account. The Town Council of Foster hereby authorizes the sale of tax liens in bulk to Rhode Island Housing and Mortgage Finance Corporation in the accordance with General Laws, with Rhode Island General Laws 44-573 sub B. Is there a motion for the resolution? Is there a second? Second. There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the resolution?
Did you reread that?
Let's take a vote on that and we'll see how we do. All those in favor of rereading the resolution indicate by saying aye. Aye. Ooh. Those opposed, nay. Nay. Pretty good. Okay. Is there discussion on the resolution? There being none, those in favor of the resolution indicate by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The resolution carries. We have one more resolution. This is the resolution on the use of Foster reserves with regards to the Providence Water Supply Board. Resolved, it is hereby voted that the town treasurer of the town of Foster Be and is hereby authorized and directed to immediately make available $175,000 from the Foster Reserve Funds for the sole purpose of reimbursing Providence Water Supply Board for the first installment of the 10-year repayment plan. See Town Ordinance of Foster 214-338 Foster Reserve Account and the Providence Water Supply Board repayment schedule. Is there a motion for the resolution?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there discussion on the motion? Please take to the microphone.
Can everybody hear me back there?
Yes.
That's good.
That'll work.
I'm speaking on behalf of all the Foster taxpayers that are not present because of the importance of this vote. We're encumbering ourselves for 10 years down the road to the tune of $1.8 million to a company that makes a lot of money. We're doing it out of fear instead of reason. I'm completely against it because we have a tax review board, okay? And I want you to know that it has never acted on any request for repayment or tax status change. It's the responsibility of the plaintiff, who in this case feels put upon, to present themselves and use due process if they want to change, just like we have to. Town services have to be provided for this company that we tax. DPW has to maintain the road. Police have to respond to complaints and infractions of the law, at great peril, I might add, in this terrorist environment we live in. There's another issue that's extremely important and affects everybody who abuts Providence Water Supply Board property. If you've got a cesspool and it fails, you have to replace it with a septic that meets standard. I'm one of the folks who abuts Providence Water Supply Board property by their pound.
I would like comments to be directed directly at the resolution.
Everybody who abuts this property, which is the people who aren't here, okay, you're going to have to build your septic twice the capacity of the occupancy requirement to meet that Providence Water Supply Board demand. $50,000 is not out of the question for every single Foster taxpayer.
Again, sir,
I apologize for getting a little bit.
We're not addressing
the issue
of the resolution.
I would like to move that we vote down this resolution until such time as we can conduct a special financial town meeting to address this grave issue. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to, before we continue with discussion, and we will continue, I think I'd like to recognize Mr. Lewis, because I don't think everybody probably has background that would be good for you to have in considering this. So, Mr. Lewis.
Okay. The rest of the meeting was easy. This is certainly the most contentious thing in front of us this evening. I'm going to try to present it in as unbiased a way as possible so that you folks can make the decision. The resolution in front of us tonight concerns reimbursement of disputed taxes that the Providence Water Board has paid to the town. With the first installment of $175,000 coming out of the Foster Reserve Fund. I'm going to briefly explain the history, our options, and then the implications, as I see it, of the two different options that are in front of us, support or defeat. Early in the 1900s, the Providence Water Supply Board took land in a number of towns, Situate, Foster, Gloucester included. This land was taxed as AR land, buildable lots then, and that continued to be done through many years. In 1985, the state of Rhode Island passed Rhode Island General Law 44-27-1, the Farm, Forest, and Open Space Act, to promote conservation to lower taxes on farmers who were being driven out of their homes due to high land values and high taxes, and to promote conservation. Neither of these issues seems to apply to the Providence Water Supply Board at the time, since their land was already conserved, so by giving them a tax break it wouldn't promote it. And by legislative mandate, they're required to conserve, so it didn't seem that that applied to them. And since they weren't a farmer, then the other issue didn't apply to them either. And all three towns, Situate, Foster, and Gloucester at the time, continued to tax the Providence Water Supply Board as they had since the early 1900s, as buildable lots. Because none of the three towns believed farm, forest, and open space applied to the Providence Water Supply Board. They disagreed. Providence Water Supply Board believed that farm, forest, and open space did apply to them and their land, and appealed their tax assessment to all three towns. And eventually, they ended up in Superior Court with the town of Situate over the issue. In 2006, it was in Superior Court, Providence Water Supply Board versus the town of Situate, and it resulted in a victory of the Providence Water Supply Board, a defeat for the town of Situate. And the judgment against the town of Situate was in the amount of $10 million in back taxes that they needed to refund to the Providence Water Supply Board. $5 million of that was going to be in cash, and $5 million of that was going to be in debt for nature. So we abandoned this road, we give it to the Providence Water Supply Board. That road has a certain value to it, and they take that off the $10 million. After that happened, the town of Gloucester settled now for essentially the same agreement that Situate has. But Gloucester has far less acreage of water supply board in their town. So whereas Situate was 10 million, Gloucester was only 173,000, they decided to cut the check and be done with it. That leaves the town of Foster as the last man standing in this situation. In the interim, since that court decision, the town of Foster has been negotiating with the Providence Water Supply Board to try to settle this across a number of different councils, 4 or 5 different councils. People have met with the Providence Water Supply Board people in Situate, in the Cranston offices, in the town hall here in Foster. At this point, we've received notification from them that they are not interested in negotiation anymore, and that they would like us to settle with them, or they're going to file in court. So that's where we are. That's why it's here in front of us, because that's the decision that we have to make. We have been advised that this could just be settled by a vote of the council. We could vote a tax abatement for them, not bring it to the financial town meeting, and just be done with it. But this council decided, and I agreed to present to this meeting this evening, exactly what this plan is, in order that the voters should have a vote, because my personal bias shouldn't necessarily affect everybody's individual wallet. So we're bringing it to you for your consideration. So we really have two options. The first option is to support the motion, support the resolution as it's been stated. And if we look at this second document that you have in front of you, the first page is an accounting of the Providence Water Supply Board. It's essentially their accounting of all of their acreage and what they believe they have overpaid each year, and what is due back to them. So the number at the lower right-hand corner of the page, $7,506,975, is what they have told us is due to them. That's back tax or tax reimbursement to them and interest. So that's our total potential exposure if we go to court. That's our total potential exposure. In addition, we pay legal costs too. They have negotiated with, as I said, a number of different councils, and they have agreed to settle for this number that's in the top. It's sort of right in the center. It says tax overpayment. At the bottom of that column, $1,604,527.98. So what they've said to us is, we believe you owe us, the town of Foster owes us $7.5 million. We're willing to accept 1.6 plus interest, and we'll go away and we won't take you to court. So the repayment plan that has been discussed with them, and they've approved it, the only thing remaining is whether the town approves it or not. It's on the second page. And it's the repayment of that $1.6 million over a 10-year period. The first payment you see due July 15th, 2015 is the $175,000 referred to in the resolution to come out of the reserve fund. Doesn't affect taxes this year. The subsequent 9 payments, 8 for $175,000, one each year, and then payment number 10 would be a balloon payment, $298,000, that we would attempt to mitigate locally with debt for nature, as Situate is doing in their town. So that's the first option. The first option is to support the resolution and follow that protocol. Now, if the folks in the audience here vote to support the first payment, then effectively you're voting to pay all of the other 9 as well. That's in the resolution. We wouldn't be making this decision individually each year. We're making it this year, and it's a yes or a no. So that's the first option. The second option that you have in front of you is to vote against the resolution. What are the implications? If you vote against the resolution, we don't make a payment out of the reserve fund. It's very likely that they'll take us to court. I think it's 100% that they're going to take us to court. I've sat at the negotiating table, and they're just not willing to discuss things with us anymore. We're going to need to set aside legal fees to fight them in court, just to defend ourselves in court. So this is going to cost us money no matter how you vote this evening. We're again faced with 2 poor options. Either we pay them out or we pay for legal fees and hope to prevail in court. We may or may not. You have to decide whether the risk is worth it. They have determined and informed us that if we settle for the low amount, that's fine, but if not, they're going to proceed in court to try to recover the full $7.5 million that's at the bottom of the page. We've also been advised by our solicitor that the courts have already decided against Situate. They have all the same arguments that we would have. Providence Water Supply Board prevailed. It's highly unlikely, in the legal opinions we've received, that the courts would overturn the case that already happened in Situate. And it's very likely that if we went, we would not prevail. And our potential exposure would be greater. So it seems that we're stuck with 2 choices, a bad deal and ultimately another bad deal. One bad deal, the first one, approval, it has a known cost, it has less exposure, and we swallow hard and have a problem with our pride. The second one is a bad deal. It's going to cost us legal fees, and it's a greater risk. So this is going to affect everybody's wallet, everyone's taxes for the next 10 years. I am intentionally not putting out there my particular point of view because I don't want to bias the body. I would like you each to look at the numbers and consider it yourselves, and when you make the decision, I expect that the council will implement your will. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer. I'm going to turn it back to.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Ms. Ryder.
Ordinarily, when you come to one of these meetings, you're voting on what will affect us in the coming year. This would affect us in the coming 10 years. I believe that without proper advertisement of that fact, that the taxpayers need to be made aware of just how far-reaching this is, and that if more people had known, perhaps they would have shown up this evening. I would suggest that this meeting be continued until information can be put out there so that people are aware of exactly how this town will be encumbered for the next 10 years. However they vote, I just feel that it's unfair because nobody knew this was coming.
Thank you.
Karen Mueller. Karen Mueller, South Killingly Road. I have a question about the 12% interest. How did they arrive at 12% interest on the back taxes? Because none of my investments have made 12% interest in the last 50, 20 years.
Okay, the 12% interest is not going backwards. What it's saying is, we owe this amount of money, this $1.6 million. If we were to cut a check for $1.6 million this afternoon, there would be no interest. What they're proposing is that we finance that over 10 years, and we'll be paying interest on that going forward. It's not interest for the past years. The 12%, it's Rhode Island statute.
Excuse me, like if they're just going forward, they've accepted, if they go to court, they're saying that they would go for the state legislative 12%, and that's what they would fight for.
Okay. Sorry.
The 12% is state legislated, and they're saying that if they went to court, they would fight for their legally entitled 12%. However, they've accepted, going forward, they have accepted prime rate. So basically, if we had the ability tomorrow to write them a check from $1.6 million, they would accept that with no interest going back. So basically, in essence, what they're saying is that we have been using their overpayment for the last 12 years, and they will not charge us an interest payment on that. But going forward, if we don't write them a check for the full amount, they will charge us interest going forward. So because we're financing it over 12 years, they've agreed to a prime interest rate of 3.25 right now, going forward. You're welcome.
Hi, Bob Morrow. I just have a question on this property answer. They're going to continue to still pay taxes in the meantime, even though we're paying towards this. And I'm assuming that as part of this negotiation, what we would do, we would be crediting their account each and every year towards their taxes, and then only having to pay the balance. So even though this year is $175,000, on their next bill, whatever their tax rate is bill is at that time, we would deduct that from the $175,000, and we would only have to pay the balance. Is that correct?
I believe that's correct. That's one way to handle it. So there's not cash changing hands.
Right.
It's just, let's say they needed to pay $200,000 in taxes, they get a $175,000 credit.
And they would still be paying us whatever the difference is, or vice versa?
They would be paying us whatever the difference is, or we would be paying them whatever the difference is, yes.
So over the period of these 10 years, basically, very little cash will be being transferred over that period of time to take care of the settlement. Whereas if we went to court, and we know, and I've read the decision on the court decision, there's no one that's going to overturn that decision against that judge. It's impossible. It's not going to happen. Plus, Providence Water Supply Board supplies more than 3/4 of this state. There is no way that any judge is going to go against the greater good of the state of Rhode Island, for the town of Boston. So I would support that we go along with this settlement, because I think it's in the best interest of the town, because it looks like they're going to continue to pay. We won't be putting any cash out of pocket. No cash will be transferring. And I think it's a damn good deal.
Okay, Mr. Savazio?
Very clearly, I hope everybody heard that we're going to lose, and we should just vote to get this done tonight, all right? I don't think there's anybody, if anybody thinks we should overturn this. We're gonna lose 7 million. This is very clear, right? So 1.7 or 7 million. The rest of it's all below. Thank you.
Mr. May.
There's some,
Get closer to the mic.
consideration. You hear me now?
That's better. You used to work for Verizon, didn't you?
Yeah, we didn't have these mics. The water that falls on our land, Providence Water Supply Board gets free of charge. They take it and they sell it for profit. People they sell it to loot it, dump it in the bay, and we're taxed to clean up the bay. What's wrong with that picture? Another picture. I don't think you can compare the lawsuit that was taken in Situate and Gloucester and compare the same set of circumstances to Forster. Forster has zoning ordinance that requires 5 acres to build a house. One of the reasons, if I'm not mistaken, that we implemented that zoning ordinance was to ensure water quality for ourselves and the water supply board. We have a conservation commission in this town who makes great efforts to see that we conserve the resources of the town. The land trust does the same thing. I think that should be taken into consideration, and I think that should change the complexion of any case that goes before any judge for consideration. I don't think we ought to pass this resolution.
Thank you.
How you doing, everybody? Gordon Rogers, can you hear me?
Gordon? No. Just a minute, please.
Just would like to make one comment. In 2006, this decision declared Providence Water Supply Board, like it or not, a not-for-profit, quasi-municipal corporation. Some of you may think, and I may personally think, they're no different than Poland Springs. The government and the courts said they are a not-for-profit, quasi-municipal corporation. That will not change.
Mr. Rogers.
Everybody hear me? I've been on the council before, and basically this agreement started back then in 2010, 2012. It's pretty much the same agreement. And when we sat down, that lawyer had discussions with him and came back, and it was his opinion that this was the best that they could get, or we were going to pay a lot more. And then he agreed, the treasurer agreed, the tax assessor agreed. By the time the ink was ready to be signed, we were lame duck, we decided to let the new council deal with it. They came in and continued the talks 2 years after that. Deja vu, I'm on again, we stopped right back over, different council set up, different solicitor, same treasurer and tax assessor. Went through the same thing, and the same thing came on the opinion of the second solicitor that we had. And that was, the best you're going to get if you go to court is this agreement plus 12%. The best. What it will cost you to do that is no less than starters of $50,000 in legal fees just to start. Because you got to remember, Providence Water Supply Board has a whole room full of lawyers sitting there already getting paid on the payment. So, in the 2 years, they didn't add any interest, but in the 2 years that have gone by, this number is actually going up $150,000. Every 2 years that we don't address this, it goes up $75,000 every year. So the council has already agreed to the payments on the 9 following, 2, 3, through 10 has been agreed. The 175 we're asking is the first one to stop this year out of the Forster Reserve Fund. The statements about the septic systems are not true. I would advise that I am going to vote for this, and I'm very conservative because I think it's a dangerous thing not to, and it could cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars if we don't approve this.
Millions. It costs us millions.
Linda Tibbetts Road, wouldn't it be better for the town to float a bond, pay off pay off this debt at less than 12% interest?
The bond rate would definitely be higher than 3.25%. Currently, they've accepted prime, the prime rate going forward, so it's not 12%.
Thank you.
Is there further discussion on the motion? Okay, you haven't spoken yet, I don't believe, on this.
Just to clarify, is that prime whatever it is every year, or is this locked in for the whole thing? I mean, is this a sure thing?
The prime rate hasn't changed in several years, so they're basically saying that this would pretty much be how it would be going forward. They've accepted this schedule. So unless something drastic happens, that's the rate we would pay.
My name is Bob Peterson, and I live on Foster Center Road. I just wanted to mention that while we consider ourselves a democracy, in this particular case, we are an oligarchy of judges, whether we like it or not. That's the first thing. The second thing is, maybe the solicitor could explain to us the implications of stare decisis with regard to the decision already made, and all of the other factors that people have brought up are not going to stand against the principle of stare decisis. So it's in our interest to vote for this, and I'm going to vote for it.
Okay. Thank you.
Cheryl Gillespie, I have a question for the council. Mr. Rogers just said that we're only voting on this first 175, that the council already made an agreement to the other 9 payments. What does that mean? So it's a done deal? We just have to decide on 175?
Mr. Lewis?
I'm not sure that I agree with Mr. Rogers' interpretation. That I would expect that when we go back after this meeting, that the council is going to have another vote. We voted, my understanding of the vote would be to accept that payment schedule to bring forward to the financial town meeting for review. My understanding of the vote was not that we approved that schedule. I'll have to go back and check the minutes, but my understanding is we were bringing that forward for the financial town meeting. And if he'd like to speak to it.
Further discussion?
I'd just like to make one more point. It's important. Again, I think there's a general concern about who's not here to vote and what the impact on them will be as taxpayers. I also think everybody in this room understands that Providence Water Supply Board is a company, not for profit or otherwise. They've been up for sale before. What guarantees do we have that this isn't just an enhancement to make them more attractive?
Is there further discussion on the motion?
Question on the motion. I think we should move forward and take votes.
Okay. Is that a motion to move the question?
I'm motion to move the question.
The motion to move the question.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Motion to move the question requires 2/3 of you to agree to move the question. Moving the question means there would be no further discussion and we would take a vote on the motion. So I'm going to ask those of you in favor of moving the question, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay.
Nay.
Okay, the question is moved. So we are now going to vote on the main motion, which is in support of the resolution as it's been discussed and explained here this evening. I am not going to take a voice vote on this motion. I'm going to take a standing vote. So I need now a count of the people in the room from the Board of Canvassers before we proceed.
Number is 90.
90 people are here. Okay. Those in favor of the motion,
May I ask you
point
a
of order?
question?
Yes.
Is it too late to make a substitute to the motion?
To make an amendment?
Yes.
It is too late to make an amendment because the question was moved. Yes. There's no further discussion, no further amendments. Okay. Those in favor of the motion, please stand. Make sure that your right hand, your right wrist is visible to the canvassers as they pass through the room. Thank you. Relax if the canvassers walk by, put your own back. Okay, go ahead and be seated. We'll be just a minute. There are 73 votes in the affirmative, so the motion passes. There being no further business to come before the meeting tonight, a motion to adjourn is in order.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Yes.
Those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.